What is up guys, I'm MKBHD here, and welcome to the full review of the Google Pixel 3 XL, and also welcome to the first wider widescreen video I've done, so let me know what you guys think of that. So this is the phone I've been using for the past week and change, and obviously it's been leaked into oblivion, so I kind of knew what I was getting myself into, but there's still so much smart stuff to talk about. This is maybe the smartest smartphone I've ever used, with some caveats. So this video is going to be mainly centered around Pixel 3 XL, but everything I will say also applies to the Pixel 3 unless I say otherwise. Here we go. So on the outside, I really like the new hardware of this phone. It's pretty much better in every way than the Pixel 2, from the way it feels to the way it's built. The highlights of the Pixel 2 are still here. So the stereo front-facing speaker pair, still here. The squeeze for assistant, the two-tone back look, but now there are new materials and just a new quality to it. We all know the back is now all glass, but this two-tone look comes from frosting the glass of the lower part, and it's impressive that it actually gives you this soft touch feel. But as you can see, it's not perfect. It can be very easily scratched. You might remember I did an unboxing of this phone on Instagram Live, and within seconds of taking it out of the box, without even ever putting it in my pocket once, there were these little tiny scratches in the back on the soft touch part. So it turns out those tiny little scratches, the micro scratches, they can buff out pretty easily with your shirt or a microfiber or something. They're definitely still there, but they're just really hard to see. But this major gash here, this came while actually shooting this video during the intro shot. To hold it still, it was like sandwiched between two batteries, so like not a normal place to be, but then we took it out and it had this pretty much unfixable gash. I really don't think most phones would scratch this bad from that amount of contact. So obviously that's the downside of the soft touch glass. Now, if you want to protect it, you already know I'm more of a skins person than a case person, and the dbrand skin can match the matte black if you want, or make the phone whatever color you want. It's a no-brainer. And of course, wireless charging still works through a case or a skin, so there's a link below. Anyway, with this new build, you get IP68 water resistance that the Pixel 2 didn't have, and like I said, wireless charging is welcome. And this is the part where I give a shout out actually to my favorite wireless charger now, the new Pixel Stand. It's 80 bucks and it's everything I want a wireless charger to be. It's great. Anyway, the buttons of the phone are clicky and tactile and good. The fingerprint reader is exactly where it should be if it's not gonna be behind the glass yet. And they've even got little touches like painting the inside of the USB-C port black. There's still no headphone jack, but it comes with USB-C headphones in the box, which is a lot better than the opposite that Apple's doing of taking the dongle out the box. So it's mostly good news in the hardware stuff on the outside. Of the three new colors total, I like matte black everything, but if you're debating between the three, I think the white will actually show the least scratches for what that's worth. So then around the front, that's obviously where things start to get interesting. Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL have great screens, objectively. Their panels are made by Samsung this year, and we all know how good Samsung is at screens. It's a 5.5-inch flexible OLED on the 3 and a 6.3-inch on the 3 XL. And both phones also now have two front-facing cameras and a pair of big front-facing stereo speakers. And the speakers are pretty good, but with a catch. So I've compared them to iPhone XS Max and the Razer phone, some of the loudest speakers in any phone. And these are every bit as loud, if not louder, and they sound fuller and they definitely have more bass, but it just distorts a little bit at the highest volume. And then they also vibrate the whole bottom of the phone at loud volumes. It's not a problem at all, I just noticed like I would feel it more than normal if I had loud music going in my hand. So then the notch at the top, it's just, you can't not talk about this screen without talking about the notch. It's like a metaphor for the whole phone. You can't talk about this phone without talking about that notch. So the fact is, it doesn't really look like any other notch on any other phone. It has this face, it's really tall, but the weird thing is it's not actually really that much bigger than a lot of other notches. Here's what I mean. This is the iPhone XS, and the notch is just about the same volume as other notches, but it's narrower and taller instead of slimmer and wider. But this choice, assuming it was a choice, shifts the whole UI more down into the screen and you lose more of the top ears, as they call it. That's just losing screen real estate. This, my friends, is what we call in the business a poor use of space. Do they absolutely have to go with this tall of a notch? I don't know. Google didn't really tell us. They didn't really emphasize anything about it in the keynote, obviously. Like, were they so set on having two front-facing cameras and a big speaker that they had to go with this tall notch? Or were they so set on this tall notch that they figured they might as well throw in two cameras and a front-facing speaker? I don't know, but it is what it is. The truth is, a week into using this phone, I don't pay attention to the notch anymore, like every other phone I've used with a notch, but I still want it to go away. I still want it to be smaller. I'm basically hoping notches in smartphones are a temporary hurdle and we're kind of over it by 2020 or 2022. Maybe that's just me being optimistic. But until then, if you absolutely cannot deal with a notch, you can either get the smaller Pixel 3 and deal with a smaller phone with a smaller battery, or you can hide the notch by ticking the developer setting that permanently blocks out the top notch section. Your call. So I could talk for a while about performance and smoothness of Android on this phone, but the bottom line is, it's good. That's the short of it. Google knows how to tune their own Android phone. It's well optimized, and this is gonna be one of the only phones with Android P for a while. Now on the 4 gigs of RAM, I'll get to that in a second, but just the overall smoothness and performance of Pixel 3 has been great. I'd say my biggest complaint with the software is probably just the gestures, honestly. I've done an entire separate video on all the new stuff with Android P, including these gestures, which were optional at the time, but now this is the only navigation option and you're forced to get used to it, which I am, but I still don't prefer it, so that's just me. But then past that, Pixel has all kinds of little software tricks and smart features, possibly making this the smartest smartphone I've ever used. Google Lens, identifying things in front of the camera all the time. That's smart. The Now Playing feature, I love this. It'll tell you what song is playing in the background of whatever room or car you're in without you having to ask, and it keeps a rolling history of it. That's smart. And of course, just Google Assistant in general, absolutely useful. And Call Screen. Call Screen is super good. I think we've all noticed at some point there seems to be more spam calls happening, at least to me, I've noticed it. So when you're receiving an incoming call on Pixel 3 with Call Screen, you can either accept, reject, or screen the call with Google Assistant. And when you do, Google Assistant picks up the phone call.
Hi, the person you're calling is using a screening service from Google and will get a copy of this conversation. Go ahead and say why you're calling.
Yeah, I'm the UPS guy and I'm downstairs.
Do you need to get a hold of them urgently?
Yes, if you don't answer, then I have to bring this 2020 Mac Pro back to the factory.
Thanks. Connecting you now.
So basically, the live transcription, it's great. It lets me know immediately if it's just a spammer robot calling and then I can hang up or mark it as spam, or if it's a real person. But I actually found most real people, when they hear that Google Assistant voice, they either immediately hang up or they think it's a voicemail. They leave a voicemail and then they hang up. So if I didn't catch what they said as they were saying it, then when they hang up, the live transcription disappears. So my one suggestion for Google would be to let me have a saved copy of that live transcription in case they just hang up. The battery life on the Pixel 3, pretty unremarkable, very average actually. I'm averaging maybe 4 to 4.5 hours of screen on time for my high brightness use, for those counting, but your mileage may vary. But basically don't expect this to go all day and then some. It's definitely a one-day phone. But again, wireless charging is welcome. I'm doing it a lot more now with my primary device now that it supports it. I've also had some conversations with Google about things that I was complaining about before, like things that weren't optimized yet, bugs. They've already promised that they're going to fix my complaint in the last video, which was the fact that full screen videos weren't centered on Pixel 3 XL. They're gonna change that, so that's awesome. Shows they're listening. So, while we're at it, here's a couple other things that aren't quite right. So Instagram still needs to update their stories. Yahoo Fantasy app is still cut off at the top, and so is YouTube Studio. And I've also had this bug with background apps that I can try to demo. So this bug I've had, I don't know if it'll do it now, but we'll see. I'll be in a music app, playing music. And a lot of times I'm connected to Bluetooth, whatever, it's supposed to be playing in the background. Then I'll open the camera app, and I'll just take one photo. And a lot of times that's enough to close the music app in the background and completely stop it from playing. Not only pausing the music, but closing it, and I have to reopen it and the track starts over. It's a weird, it seems like a memory thing. I kind of wonder if this would still happen with 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. Maybe it wouldn't, but maybe it's just an easily fixable bug. All right, I've made you wait long enough. Let's get to the last big puzzle piece of this phone. One of the big reasons you're all probably here, and one of the reasons this phone has been so hyped among content creators, YouTubers, people like that, it's this camera. So Google's stuck with one camera on the back in a world where we literally have multiple phones coming out with 3 or 4 cameras on the back. and Google is super stubborn with 1. But as they should, because their software and their image processing is everything. So I'll just say it straight up. Pixel 3 takes the best photos of any smartphone camera. Better than iPhone XS, better than Red Hydrogen, better than any Samsung or any LG phone, better than Pixel 2. But I don't want to just tell you that it's good, I want to tell you why it's good. Pixel 3 photos have A+ detail, A+ dynamic range, A+ autofocus, and now even better, warmer I think, more accurate colors. Pixel 2 tended to be a little bit cool. The sensor is big enough that you can pretty often create a real natural shallow depth of field when you take a photo of something close enough, so you don't need to use portrait mode very often. But when you do use portrait mode, the edge detection is getting better every year, and it's excellent at this point. So the typical photo from a Pixel 3 camera has a super strong dynamic range. It's tack sharp from corner to corner, which is my kind of camera. My only complaint would be sometimes the HDR can feel too aggressive. Like, you know that effect when you have an overdone HDR, which can kind of look like a halo around the high contrast areas? That's hard to edit out, and so you gotta retake the photo when that happens. But other than that, there's not a lot to dislike about Pixel 3's camera. It has me confident as I'm taking photos that they're going to be good no matter what. And none of that like AI tweaking the colors after you take the photo stuff, no over processing, it's just a good camera. And then on top of all of that, there are some other smart features that they've added this year. So motion autofocus is particularly good. You tap something on the screen and it locks focus basically on that object and tracks it around the frame. Not only does it work well, but it's like an added confidence booster that what you're gonna take a photo of will stay in focus. Super res zoom, which I was pretty hyped for, didn't turn out that drastic. I don't actually use digital zoom that much, but I found that when I do go past about 5x, things start to get kind of watercolory, like a watercolor painting. I'm not sure if Super Res Zoom is actually preserving any extra detail here. In fact, side by side with the iPhone XS at full zoom, it looks like the iPhone preserves more detail, which I guess you'd expect when it has a telephoto lens. So yeah, it's a cool concept in theory, but I think it still needs some work to actually catch up to optical zoom. It might be a while. But I will say from like 1x to 3x zoom, Pixel pretty much always looks great. And then of course for selfie takers, Pixel 3 has absolutely the best selfie camera I have ever seen. Selfie portrait mode is really good. And of course having a second even wider angle camera is gonna let you get more in the shot, whether it's more people or more background or whatever you're into. But just generally, not a whole lot of beauty mode. It's tack sharp. What you see is what you get. And then in the video front, it's still a mixed bag. I still say iPhone is the best video camera in any smartphone, as long as Pixel 3 doesn't have 4K 60, and it still has slightly more washed out colors and a somewhat inconsistent exposure, but it's still pretty good. Stabilization is absolutely impeccable. This is actually a handheld shot, but it looks like it's on a tripod, which is ridiculous. But the microphone is still not that great, so if you were thinking about vlogging with this smartphone, this probably isn't the one. Overall though, as a single camera system, Pixel 3 is really impressive. It's just a masterclass in computational photography and just how much software really matters in 2018. So basically I wanna give a shout out to The Verge's review title, which I actually think pretty much nailed it best. It paints the picture that I agree with, which is the best camera in a smartphone gets a better phone. The best camera gets a better phone. If you scroll down to the comment section right now, I pretty much guarantee the first 3 comments all have the word notch in them. Pretty much guarantee it. Go ahead, scroll down, see for yourself. It's like a catch-22. If all we do is talk about this notch every time the phone comes up, then we kind of have to ignore how good the rest of the phone is. But if we don't talk about the notch, then they might get the idea that we like the notch or that we're into it, which we're not. So how good this phone is will be overshadowed by how bad this notch is. That's the way it's gonna be. And that's everyone's fault. That's our fault, that's Google's fault for making it this way, that's reviewers' fault, that's commenters' faults, it's everyone's fault. I don't think Google cares if this phone sells much. I think what they do care about is flexing what they're good at, which at this point is software, machine learning, and AI. And if you can see that and appreciate it, then you'll like this phone. You should get this phone for the camera and or the software. They're both best in class, and beyond that, there isn't any really huge reason to get this phone. But it's true, the best camera just got a better phone, and I'm really happy about that. So I'll be carrying this phone for that reason, for now. Anyway, that's the review. Until the next one, thanks for watching. Catch you later. Peace.